We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
Hello to everybody. It is Monday, the 2nd of October. Welcome to CW Pod this week. I am having one of our guys on, Scott Dochterman from The Athletic, one of the best college football guys I know. And I wanted to dig deep on a few topics, specifically what's going on with his beat in Iowa City. And I also wanted to lean on him with some Big 12 stuff too, because I'm just thinking through things and I like to talk it out with people I respect. Real quick, before we bring it into Scott, I got myself a bottle of Steeple Ridge Bourbon right here. Scott, are you a bourbon guy at all?
Unfortunately, no. And The reason is when I was 14 years old, I had a pretty bad experience with bourbon that kind of ruined me for life.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Well, I can't drink rum. I can't drink rum because of college. I understand.
Yeah, there's about a handful of college type drinks but this one was one I would not recommend to anybody, and especially as young as I was. Let's just say a fifth of bourbon at age 14 does not go well. So I struggle smelling it. Let's put it that way.
I never would have guessed that, but God bless you. Yeah. Well, I promise you. Okay, if you ever get the Steeple Ridge is much better quality than whatever you were downing at 14 years old.
No question. That was
you. How old are you?
I'm 50 years old now.
Okay, so my dad is 69, so he's considerably older than you. But he always tells me stories that when he was like that age, they drink brandy. That was the thing. They just drank brandy by the bottle, which is you don't even hear about brandy anymore, right?
Never, no. And we didn't even have it really back then. I mean, it was just basically the cheapest stuff you could find, and this was the cheapest bourbon I could find, and it soured me on all the great bourbon like the ones that you're displaying, just because I can't hardly smell it.
Wow. Well, that's hilarious. God bless you. All right, Scott. The Iowa thing. By the way, I thought your legends and listeners last week was probably your guys' best episode, and they've all been good. But I had so many Iowa fans texting me how much they enjoyed it. So listen to those guys if you haven't. Here on Iowa Everywhere, they record on Thursday mornings, so it's always up on the feed on Thursday afternoons. Of course, you can read Scott's stuff in The Athletic, which I am a subscriber of. Your deal got a little bit more complicated, believe it or not, over the weekend when Cade McNamara goes down. And it kind of it's a weird deal for Iowa. And because there's nuance to everything, right? So now, everything you do in the offseason, you bring in this big name quarterback, and he's, and McNamara's out there saying oh, I dare you to say we're going to suck. And, all these quotes. And now that's this is gone, assuming he's out for the year. It's Monday. We haven't gotten official word yet. So that is an assumption. And now you bring in this guy who really wasn't recruited in Deacon Hill. Not like he had all these offers, and he's a little bit Spencer Petrie to me because he's got this big arm, but he's not very accurate and whatever. There's nuance here, but I got to find out where we should go with it because it's to me, I fight with Hassel about this all the time. I'm like, you guys should just appreciate going 9-3, right? It's not bad. It's a pretty good spot to be in when you're just doing it. But these Iowa fans now are, they're chanting "Fire Brian." It's just a really toxic situation. But I guess my big picture question to you, my friend, is okay. So McNamara's gone. You bring in this other guy, and to me, the way Iowa wins now is doing it exactly how they've done it in the past, which has pissed everybody off. I don't see how the Ferentzes can win here.
It's in a really tough situation now, Chris, without Cade McNamara. It was tough before he was hurt. And it was tough even before Luke Lachey was hurt, who was by far their best offensive player. And now they really have to figure out, how do you get the last couple of drops of ketchup out of this bottle? And it's a glass bottle at a diner in the middle of nowhere, because it's just like, you can't even get a knife in there. So that's how they've got to try to figure out how to get some offense on the field. And when you look at what Cade McNamara brought, he's fairly accurate. The numbers don't show that, but he had a pretty good idea of what to do offensively in this system. And I think he could push back a little bit on the Ferentzes when needed. We just didn't get a chance to really see that because there were 3 non-conference games, Iowa State notwithstanding, and then Penn State, where they got obliterated and then gone within the second series on offense, and really a pretty quality first series that he played. So that's really unfortunate. And now you bring in Deacon Hill, who is somewhat Spencer Petrie, because he's a big guy. I mean, big in every area, and just has a rocket arm. But unlike Petrus, he's like a Mustang wild arm. Like, I'm going to throw this ball down the field, and I don't care what anybody says. And unfortunately for Iowa, that can mean a lot of picks. And it was one the other night, and it could be more once people start to get a real handle on how he performs. But it's really, the whole thing comes back to me is the inability to block up front. That's the problem. And Iowa could be successful, like in 2020, if it could just have the ability to run block effectively, to be able to get 4 yards a carry. Now, having 2 players out, the top 2 running backs out for the last few games, hurts, but they're still struggling to get consistent holes, and they're not going to run zone because they're not good enough at it. And so that's where this weird vortex is of Brian Ferentz's play calling. You don't know what you have at quarterback. Offensive line, is it a recruiting issue? Is it a George Barnett issue? Is it what's the issues? They're all issues. They're all problems. And so now they're at this point of, how do you move forward? And the schedule allows them to do that. But I think they're going to really, it's going to be more of a grind than probably the last month of last year was.
Yeah, Hill goes out and throws 43% completion percentage. Are you a Pro Football Focus guy, Scott?
Somewhat, yeah. I do like some of the analytics.
The offensive, the run block ratings that you're discussing have been atrocious. I'm talking like high 40s. Like, they're not even getting into the 50s some games.
Yeah, I've seen that. And I've seen those. I look at those numbers every week, and I just try to digest just how much of it is true versus how much of it is, nuance and stuff.
Well, it's the scheme too. Like, that's what I put it more on than anything, because I don't know. Like, this is just a theory of mine, but I know you're a football nut like I am, and I am very biased. If it were up to me, every team would be running the air raid, that is just my style, and it doesn't mean it's the only way to play the game. But when I watch Brock Purdy in the NFL, when I watch what Jalen Hurts was able to, people had buried Jalen Hurts when he was at Alabama. Like, he was done. His career was over. When I watched Tua and the Dolphins, like, some of these quarterbacks are really good. Some of them are in these phenomenal systems where they can distribute the football properly, be a smart quarterback, and just know exactly what you are. And that's a distributor. That's really hard to do in Iowa's offense. Right? Like, so to me, it's like, if it's like that for the quarterback, and it's also like that for the line, if they know what you're going to do just based off of how you're lined up. I've had former D1 quarterbacks watch Iowa, and they'll tell me, like, watching film, like, this is exactly what they know, exactly what's coming. So, to me, it's like, I just think, like, if they let's say they go 9-3 this year, it's like, it looks like it did last year. Like they're going to have defensive touchdowns like they got the other night and great special teams play. And that's all and well. But I'm staring at this fan base. And again, it's perplexing to me being an Iowa State guy, where 2 years ago, my last year on Daily Talk Radio, Iowa wins 10 games. And my God, like you would have thought the world was coming to an end. Like, I don't know where they go because, like, to me, like, this is not going to change. If they win 9 or 10 games this year, it looks like last year. And then where do you go?
Well, the problem is it looks like every year, and everybody can spot where the issue is. Football is, all sports, but football in particular is entertainment driven. People want to see scoring. They want to see offense. With what you just mentioned about pro football, the Miami Dolphins are an exciting team. They move up and down the field. People want to see big scores. They don't want to see grinded out football the way it was played 50 years ago and 3 yards in a cloud of dust and Woody Hayes and Bo Schembechler, and that style of football just doesn't work today and in today's climate. And that's part of the problem Iowa fans have, and I completely get it, which is they're not successful on the side of the ball where people are most drawn to the sport. It's like, Wisconsin a little bit under Bo Ryan to a lesser extent, that sometimes they'd win 54-48 and you're like, that's boring. You're holding the ball for 28 seconds and then you miss and then you get a rebound and then you move the ball again. That's not what people want to watch with sports. They want to watch scoring. They want to watch up and down the field. And Iowa is the exact opposite of that. And they've won games because they're so disciplined. But the problem is that it's an unequal distribution of talent and results. The defense is elite. This year it's just good, but it's still, and then your special teams are elite, but your offense is the worst in the country year in and year out. And people see that. Everybody can see that and say, why can't you be better here? Why can't you get better? And then you look at the scheme, you look at the tendencies, which I'm currently doing today. Just one aspect I'll get into is every single time that Iowa's had at least 3 receivers on the field, they've been in shotgun. Every single time, 76 times.
That's the type of stuff that people point out to me too. The exact
example. So you know how to defend it. And the majority, and I have to break it all down a little bit more, but there have only been a handful of runs and most of them in draws. So it's like, okay, they're in shotgun. They've got 3 receivers on the field. Kind of the basic of what you're going to get. They don't have any quick game. They don't get the ball out of the quarterback's hands right there at the snap. And Brock Purdy was fantastic at that and still is. You can still be a zone-based physical run scheme. I think you see that with Brock Purdy in San Francisco right now. I love that scheme. That is my favorite scheme in football. I'm more of a physical kind of observer. Wide zone, distribute the ball, get it to your playmakers, let them do things with the ball. And Iowa does the exact opposite, which is why they have 20 catches by wide receivers through 5 games. I mean, and you're not going to be able to, and you can see this storm cloud coming your direction if you're Iowa, which is Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, all elite offenses. And you're going, we can't keep up with those teams. We might be able to slow them down, but you've got to be able to have a counterpunch. You can't just sit there and say, yeah, I can take your best shots and win a 12-round fight. You've got to score once in a while. And there's nothing to suggest that Iowa's going to be able to do that. And that's the frustrating part, I think.
That's to me where this comes to a head. Whatever happens this year, whatever. Like I keep telling Iowa fans, and they think that I'm just the snarky Iowa State guy. No, I'm being dead serious. Like, enjoy this year. Because if you've got an offense like that, you're not winning 9 games again in this new Big Ten with, what will be more of an even schedule. You're not going to kind of be able to, I don't want to say hide in the West, but like it's very similar teams that they're playing, and that's one of the reasons why I like Iowa State in the future of the Big 12, because it's for the first time I feel like they're going to be playing similar teams on a week in, week out. We'll get into that in a minute. But, where do you go? And let's say the Ferences are back next year. Like, do they realize that, you think that, or do they think we've done it this way? We win 9 games every year. We keep getting these extensions. The season tickets are sold out. It's not like there's like this reject. Yeah, you may be chanting fire Brian, but you're still there paying tickets. Is it even realistic that they could, change things up? And I don't know. But to me, your point is good luck against Lincoln Riley. Good luck against Chip Kelly. Good luck, and I think Nebraska is going to keep getting better. We'll see. But I think Rule's a pretty good coach, and they seem to be recruiting okay. Like Wisconsin has made the jump. They're running their version of the air raid now. I'm not saying that Kirk Ferentz needs to do that. Or Scott, are you better off being I think I could make this argument that Iowa needs to be different than the rest. I don't know what that means. I mean, are you running the wishbone? I don't know, but I don't know. I think it is this is a crossroads, man, for the future of this football program. And I don't know what the right answer is.
I don't think they can bring it back the way it's currently constituted and expect fans to buy in. The only reason why they bought in this year is because they hit the portal pretty hard. Got a new quarterback, a couple offensive linemen, got a couple, great tight end. They got some wide receivers, and it's like, okay, they're really trying to do things here. And and Kirk and Brian to an extent, all were like, personnel matters. We weren't real good there, and that's true. But to see now the excuses or reasons, excuses, however you want to phrase it, that's over. It's schematic now as much as anything. So I think what you're doing is you're looking at it as, you've got to do something different, and you got to do something different with different people, because Brian is toxic. Even if this would have turned around this year, then he wouldn't have gotten much credit for it anyway. And so, Brian understands the current climate. He knows what's fans think of him. He's not living in a bubble and thinks that everything he knows, he can hear. And he and I have talked about that before. Kirk did it to another extent, is a little more isolated from that. He's either weathered against it or just figures, I've been here 25 years. My way works. See, look at the results every year.
Yeah. He's the best coach in school history by far.
They've won. They've had one losing season, regular season since 2000. So they've studied, and that's been against all kinds of good teams. They've won big games, so they have that track record of success. But I think I can see three detrimental areas that absolutely have to be changed for this program to remain competitive and then move forward offensively. And one is they've got to do better offensive line. The third straight year is unacceptable. And you can say last year they were, 2 years ago they were injured. Last year they were young. No, it's time. You got to produce. And if you don't, then you got to start looking at reasons why. 2 wide receivers. The attrition rate has been a catastrophe. And over the last 10 years in recruiting up through this year, they've had 24 scholarship freshmen, and only 4 have finished their tenure at Iowa. 3 more are in the pipeline. That's unacceptable. You're either misidentifying everybody in recruiting, or you're not getting anything, you're not keeping them happy. And then third, it's schematic. I watched Michigan State, and that's by no means a good team, but I'm watching the way that they're getting the ball out on swing passes. And it's like, okay, so their receivers are blocking down the field just like Iowa wants them to. So are their tight ends, and they're getting the ball out of their hands immediately. So they're allowing them to do something with it. Iowa has to do that, or this is going to just be grinded out, run for 1 yard, pass on second down. Then it's 3rd and 9. And then, all bets are off here.
Scott, you're smarter than me. I think it is number 3. Do I think that this is like a, great offensive line? No. But I just think it gets really hard to do your job when the defense knows exactly what you're going to do. Same with quarterback. This is what I was trying to, and it's hard with McNamara because he was hurt. But was he hurt, or did he go from being a guy who was on a team that had better talent than 90% of the teams they play with a decent scheme to playing for the worst scheme with, talent that is comparable to the competition. Like maybe he's just not seeing the field as well because of that. Like that's just it better than I from an outsider though. It's like like Iowa State all of a sudden like they started throwing the ball successfully the last couple of weeks. And it's like, oh, their running game's come along. Well, yeah, it's because they know that don't just stack the box and Iowa just hasn't been able to do that for one reason or another with these wide receivers over the course of, since Marvin McNutt, really.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And they haven't changed their scheme since then either. They did for a little while with Greg Davis, but trying to marry the zone scheme with short passes, and it just wasn't going to work out. I mean, he didn't even use the tight end down the field. And that was, so that I still like this scheme better than I did Greg Davis's, even though the results might've been a little bit better at times. But I look at, if you want to compare the two, I mean, there's been a lot of, Matt Campbell looks like the Kirk Ferentz on this side of the state. Everybody thinks that, but the things that I see with Matt Campbell was first year, he recognized really quickly that 4-3 with 4 quarters coverage is not going to work in the Big 12. It does in the Big 10, but it's not going to there. So what he and Heacock did was let's devise a different scheme that now everybody likes to run against up-tempo passing offenses. And they've been very competitive on that side of the ball ever since because of that. 2, maybe this isn't the scheme that you want to run offensively, but it's the one scheme that works. They're willing to lean into it, give it a shot, even with a redshirt freshman quarterback. And Iowa, on the other hand, doesn't look at it and this is what I would do if I'm coach, and it's easy for me to play fantasy football here. But why not give Cooper DeJean an opportunity at quarterback? You've got a couple of quality corners. And I understand that, but I look at this as, hey, you want to win, you get your playmaker the ball on every single down. Let him run it, let him pass it. That would be, and this, what this fan base would do? It would explode.
Oh,
it would be so energized if Saturday night you see number 3 trotting out under center. Oh my God, this place would explode. And then you wouldn't hear Fire Brian if he's out there making plays. But instead it's like, well, and that's been the problem over the years that when they've had wide receiver issues, no Desmond King, he's not going over on the other side of the ball. No Micah Hyde, he's not going over the other side of the ball. And now you've got the ultimate weapon, who I call the most exciting Iowa player since Tim Dwight. And I believe that.
I said that this morning and I hadn't heard you say that. That's great. All right.
Yeah.
He is. He's phenomenal.
When he's back to punt and you hear, Coo! And at first it sounds like a boo, which is not unusual at Iowa, but all of a sudden it's for Cooper. And then when everybody in the stadium is watching him to return a punt 70 yards for a touchdown, get that guy the ball.
That interception he made was incredible.
Yes.
Got his feet in there.
3 pick sixes last year. He had a sideline interception or an end zone interception against Iowa State last year. He's a phenomenal player. And I think if you want to win this year, if you want to give yourself a chance, you just say, you know what, let's dumb this down. Let's put him at quarterback, put him in the shotgun on every play, let him zone read and let him throw the ball. You don't need to run stale Iowa offense.
I tell you what, Scott, and again, I'm emotionally detached from all that. I hate watching Iowa games because of exactly what you're talking. It's just not fun to watch.
Yeah.
That would make it absolute must-see TV if Cooper DeJean was at quarterback. Do you think there's any chance that happened? I mean, these are the same guys that would only play Noah Fant like 10 snaps. Okay. Yeah. So I have a hard time believing that, but man, that would be awesome.
Yeah. No, because it's Iowa. That's the problem. It's like that, the wooden, I hate to almost say like German military, which is very good, except for, hey, there's a wall there. We'll go through the wall. It's like, no, go around it. You're there. No. We don't do it that way because we don't do it that way. And that's what you see with Iowa that makes it, again, frustrating. Like, in 2020, they operated out of Wildcat for several plays, and it really worked considering they had 3 good playmakers in the same package with Tyler Goodson, who was a first-team All-Big Ten guy, Tyrone Tracy, who's now at Purdue, and Amir Smith-Marset, all in the backfield, working out of the Wildcat. I'm like, yes. And even in the bowl game, they had Sam Laporta taking a few snaps in the shotgun. And I'm like, just go the distance here. Put Deshaun Lee, who started the first 2 games at cornerback. He's going to make mistakes, but do something on offense. And that's, again, I remember in 2015 when Marshall Kane was the kicker. And like the first series of the game, they got into field goal position and they hiked it to him. And he didn't get a first down. But the fans stood up and cheered and gave him a standing ovation. Why? Because it was different. Mm-hmm. And if Cooper DeJean, the fan favorite, was to be back there. Because as you said, Chris, I have people on my staff at The Athletic who are like, I don't want to cover Iowa. I have editors saying, I don't want to have to watch Iowa.
Yeah.
And that's a shame because it's just a stale, boring product year after year after year.
It's a testament to their fans too, honestly, like that they keep showing up and selling that place out. And they were awesome. The atmosphere was awesome on Saturday night. I thought it was really cool. It looked great. Okay, let's go to the other side. This is more of a Big 12 conversation. Not even a Big 12. This is a college football conversation for me. I had a bit of a realization come to me on Saturday night, and I don't even know if it's accurate, but I need to bounce it off somebody. So I've had the opinion for about a year that at Iowa State specifically that Campbell's job is getting better, Otzelberger's job is getting worse because of the state of the basketball league. Like you're going against blue blood, high spenders, Hall of Fame coaches, night in, night out basketball wise, especially now that Arizona's coming in and like all these new schools. It's like good luck traveling to BYU on a Tuesday night. That's hard. Like if they're all, that's a hard game. That's a hard place to go play. Whatever. This is a football conversation. For the first time since I've been around Iowa State, when I stack Iowa State up to its peers, you're not completely outmanned from a talent and roster perspective in this new Big 12. And of course, I go into Saturday night with this bias in my head that this is my opinion and it has to be right. Well, I look at Oklahoma and I look at Texas. I look at what they've done in the portal. I know what they're doing with NIL. For the first time since Campbell's first year, and part of this is the state of where Iowa State's at, too. You got all these freshmen playing. You're young. You're, by all means, rebuilding. They're in a rebuilding mode right now. We'll see if you can get it rebuilt. Iowa State didn't belong on the field with Oklahoma. They didn't. And there were some encouraging things with the offense. I think if those teams play 10 times, Oklahoma wins 10 of them, which is shocking to me in the Campbell era, year 8, that this is a reality. But I looked last year, so I watched last year's game. And Dylan Gabriel throws for like 160 yards. Iowa State had 3 turnovers. Really could have been in that football game had they not had I look at what Venables did in the offseason, how much better they got. And it's clear to me that Texas and Oklahoma, who are going to the SEC, are that much better than the rest of the league. I don't think anybody else will beat them this year. Maybe a Kansas State can bite you in Manhattan, but the days of Tom Herman losing in Lawrence are over. Like it's not happening anymore because the talent level is that much higher. Again, that is my biased opinion, but it was really clear to me. Do you see that happening as well, or is there more nuance to this conversation?
No, I think you're spot on this. When the difference between an Oklahoma and Texas year after year after year after year is that their resources are just dwarf everybody else. And that's what's always been the situation with the Big 12 going way back to the formation of it. And so their recruiting area is outstanding. They are the flagship institutions of their state and, of course, of the region and the conference. So, but I think the NIL period has allowed like Oklahoma to reset better than it has ever before. Same thing with Texas, that now instead of their mistakes and that they made in recruiting, now they can erase those mistakes by going out and get somebody to replace them. It's like, yeah, we got this 5-star left tackle who's a worthless, what, and he's not doing anything. Well, we're going to go get somebody else who can. And maybe they play at Boise State, or maybe they're wherever. I mean, a lot of times even in the conference, and they're okay doing it. And I think that's just the way the nature of the game is going. And for an Iowa State, for Iowa, for a lot of developmental programs, they're going to have to make sure that their culture is still strong, and they're going to have to make sure that they keep the players that they have. And a lot of times it's keep them happy while they're there, and then be able to entice a few players. But it's always going to be about development, because you're not going to be able to compete if you lose, let's say a Will McDonald, instead of going pro, decides, I'm going to go to Texas this year, that type of thing. You're going to need those players to succeed. And again, an OU, which was terrible last year, or Texas, which has been the most classic underachiever in the sport for all these years. Now they can erase those mistakes. Now they can plug and play. And Iowa did that to an extent, but not to the way those teams are going to do it. So, but in the new look Big 12, what I love about this for Iowa State is now everybody looks just like them. Now it's going to be about who can build the best program, who can maintain it, who can develop it. And then, schedule is going to matter and all those types of things. But you don't look across the board and, there's some advantages here, some advantages there. But I think Iowa State is right where it needs to be. It's just going to be a matter, can they build upon their past successes, learn from this, rough period and take it and move it forward. And I think, I believe in Matt Campbell. I think he will do that. I think he's shown an ability to pivot when he's needed to. I've seen kind of the videos, and I won't say it's troubling, but it's also a little bit concerning, how fired up he gets when people kind of come at him, and he needs to kind of let that go. Because if he happened to leave for somewhere else, it's going to be worse. But
no doubt,
you do see this new league and think Iowa State can play in this league. If Iowa State has a Brock Purdy, a Breece Hall, Xavier Hutchinson, Charlie Kolar, those are great players, but they're going to also have to make sure that, all right, and this is where your friend Brent is going to have to come in, and that's keep those players too and keep them happy, because otherwise every single team in the country is like, hey, you want to go play in the SEC? You want to go play in the Big Ten? Come this way. So that's going to be a challenge.
It's really interesting. And I think this is now an Iowa State conversation too, because I think Iowa will be in the same boat, because you're going from being like, I don't know, tier 2 Big Ten is fair, where Iowa's been for a long, because you've had Michigan and Ohio State. And I don't think I'd put Penn State on that tier. They haven't really won championships, but whatever, put them wherever you want. I mean, and now you're bringing in, I would put Oregon with Iowa. I would put Washington with Iowa. Definitely USC is probably above Iowa. Like, you don't have the stature that you did. I think Iowa's actually in a weird spot, a little bit tougher, because they're expected to play in one of the two big spending leagues, right? Now Iowa's going to have more money, but they're kind of more the prey in this new world than they have been, I guess. My concern for both of these schools, and I think players that are, or fans that are paying to go and watch these things, is, okay, Iowa or Iowa State's got this really young tight end that we really like. It's really fun to watch. Well, what's to mean that, he's not just going to come and get bid out? But I also think it works both ways. And this is where we're learning is I truly believe, Scott, that playing time is going to win out for these guys. I've never met a D1 recruit that signed at this level that didn't think he was going to the NFL. So I truly think that getting on the field is still the most important thing to these guys.
Yeah, it is. And the only people that I've seen that have altered that just a little bit, and I think it's kind of fascinating, are almost the journeyman quarterbacks who have started, and caretakers are like backup quarterbacks in the NFL. Now they're backup quarterbacks in college football, that, hey, they'll go somewhere for 6 figures and be the backup, or if they have a hot freshman or did they really want to insert there, but you're just in case it doesn't work out right away or injury. That is something that's going to be part of it. But pertaining to this discussion, it's going to be about, there are a lot of different aspects that are going to be in play here. Like, I look at the guys Iowa picked up, And, Nick Jackson, for instance, a Virginia 2-time All ACC second team linebacker, graduate, smart young man, wants to go to the NFL. And instead of looking at bling and instead of looking at, ching, it's really more about, hey, Iowa consistently puts players in the NFL and is a good defense. If I go there, I like the culture and I'm going to fit in there and I'm going to play and put myself in a better position than even Oklahoma was, at that spot, even though Oklahoma has bigger stature. And that's a mature decision that a lot of older football players make from time to time. And Cade McNamara was kind of the same thing, that thought, hey, Iowa's style of play suits my ability a little bit better. And, so that made sense. The problem for an Iowa is, as we see this offense just completely fall apart, even more than it was last year, that how many players here are going to say, I'm not sticking around for this. And even worse, how many players are going to say, there's no way I'm going there. I'm a wide receiver. Why would I go there? I can't catch the ball. They don't even throw it to the wide receivers. And then everybody will recruit that against you. So, that's another thing that's got to be on their mind. That,
well, I even felt like this, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just speculating here. I have no inside information. I'm a spectator. When I was watching that McNamara press conference last week, I was thinking like, oh no, like he looks defeated. He looks like when he said the whole, I don't call the plays. I don't like, it was total opposite of what we had heard from that guy, earlier. And like, to me, I was thinking to myself, like, this is terrible, like for recruiting from that standpoint. And like Chris said to me today, like, well, if McNamara can come back, should he? And I was like, no, like he needs to go somewhere where he's going to be able to throw the ball and like, a proven offensive system. And like, did I overreact to that? Cause like, I'm watching this guy and he seemed completely defeated in that moment.
I saw it too. I asked him a question and you could see the frustration coming from him. And because I asked him about wide receivers, because I was writing about the wide receiver woes of Iowa and where they've gone. And here was a stat that remains true. Even I've just updated the Michigan State stuff, but they have at least 2 tight ends on the field on 73% of the plays. Last week it was 76. It's come down a little bit since Luke Lachey's been out. But 73% of the plays, they have 2 tight ends on the field, which would be fine if they had Luke Lachey and Eric All. Yeah. But even going way back to 5 years ago with Fant and Hawkinson, that was 61.8%. And that was one where I'm like, that needs to be 80% when you've got Fant and Hawkinson, 2 first-round talents. But Kirk's like, well, we see him a little bit as a specialist. No, he's better than everybody else out there. He's a weapon.
Come on,
and it's just. That's just the thinking they've got to get past. And, whether it's this year, putting Cooper DeJean out there is radical, especially for Iowa.
No, we got to do it. We got to make this a thing. Let's
apply
the pressure.
Right. Other radical ideas would be, like move the offensive, move Brian to offensive line, bring up John Budmeyer, who's the analyst, make him quarterbacks coach and pass game coordinator, and do things like that, which other programs do. Indiana fires its offensive coordinator yesterday, and Iowa's like, Iowa fans are being sarcastic as always, but like, you mean you could do that? Yeah, you can.
Well, I think I tweeted during the Ohio State game last year about DeJean, and you're on it, and I'm gonna just keep pounding all my Iowa media friends to we're going to get this. We are going to will this into existence, because it would be the most incredible. It would be like a heel turn in pro wrestling. It's like, oh man, you've been the bad guy, and now all of a sudden you're going to be. It would save the Ferentz's job if they would do that. And if they don't and go 9-3, like we're in some serious trouble here. If they do that and go 9-3, people will be ecstatic. I'm all in. Let's go.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you. I don't know that they can go 9-3 right now.
Yeah,
people are looking at this schedule, but I'm like, does Purdue look automatic the way it once did? Does Northwestern beat Minnesota? Minnesota would love nothing more than to beat Iowa and Iowa City. They haven't done it since 1999.
the defense and special teams, like the thing is, it's like you can do that the last 2 years because you're getting touchdowns elsewhere. Like I know, man, I have so much respect for, Parker and and LeVar Woods, and like it's been phenomenal, and they're amazing at what they do. There's still an element of luck that comes into defensive and special teams touchdowns. You can be really good at it, and they've got a ball hawking secondary and all of that. But to have all of that layout for you 3 years in a row would be very surprising to me.
Especially without a pass rush. I mean, and that's been a big problem. They've only had 3 sacks thus far. Last year they had 35, and they have a lot of the same faces, so that's a little bit crazy. But in some ways, I look at Kirk Ferentz, and he reminds me a lot of Marty Schottenheimer when he was at Kansas City, and that is they played Marty ball, and I covered the Chiefs right after he left, and it was always close to the vest, great defense, tough, but then one play would get them beat. And it always happened in the playoffs in important games. And in Kirk Ferentz's case, it's been that way too, where even when they're really good, it's like one play, one little small sliver costs you because you don't have the offense to compete in that regard. And I think that's going to be a shame. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Deacon Hill will go out and save the world. Maybe Ferentz will shame on you for the 100th time because nobody's been better in verse situations than him. But I just don't see a path to success. Maybe victory, but not success with the way they're currently constituted.
All right, get out of here. I kept you longer than I said I would. I appreciate you, my friend.
All right, thanks, Chris. Have a good one.
Thanks, pal. Man. Scott Dochterman from The Athletic. You can listen to him and Chad Leistico here on Iowa Everywhere on Thursdays with their Legends and Listeners show. Aiden Wyatt produces that. It is presented by Heartland Flags. I am fired up. I not just bullshitting you guys here. I got a Tulane flag last year from Heartland. I'm going to fly that up at Jack Trice Stadium this weekend underneath my Cyclone Fanatic flag. That'll be cool. Bring me a bottle of Steeple Ridge Bourbon as well in the old camper. Again, I like the black label. The white label is good for more of the beginner style. 92 proof. It is a wonderful whiskey that is made by incredible people right there in Erling, Iowa. Everything is done there. So I would encourage you to pick one of these bad boys up at Fairway. We're from the Channel Seed Studio. Hope you enjoyed this. I love doing two guys named Chris. I also like to slow down and do the more in-depth college football conversation, which was fun to be able to do today with Scott Dochterman. Thanks to Scott Dochterman for joining me. Thanks to Steeple Ridge Bourbon for presenting the CW Pod here on Iowa Everywhere.